guys, it's Carolyn. Welcome back to the podcast, and I'm very excited about today's guest, about Ken Rusk, who started from nothing, built his way up, multi-million-dollar company, author of Blue Collar Cash, a book that I highly recommend you read. I've read it. I've learned a lot of things from it. And today we're going to take a deep dive into goal settings and what that looks like. Good morning, Ken. How are you?
I'm great, Carolyn. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And before we get into all things goal setting and the steps to it, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your struggle, how you got to where you are.
Well, yeah, it's a pretty typical or maybe even atypical story. But when I had a bunch of little part-time jobs like most kids did, paper route, bowling alley, worked at a bakery, that kind of thing when I was 12, 13, 14. And I kind of got into this theory of I could trade labor for something. Like if I wanted a new aluminum bat to play baseball, I would trade labor for that bat. And it was just kind of a transactional thing for me. And it just made sense. So when I was 15, I said, I need my first full-time job. So I wanted my first used car or take my girlfriend out for pizza or go bowling with my buddies, whatever. So my high school actually shared a fence with an industrial park, and we used to cut through a hole in this fence to get to this industrial park, and we'd go to the carryout after school and just hang out. And when it came time to work, I was like, okay, one of these businesses has to be cool. They have to be doing something, that I can do. So I knocked on one of the doors, and they said, yeah, we're ditch diggers, and I knew someone that had worked there, and I said, well, I'm qualified to do that. So quickly in the summertime, I dug ditches. In the wintertime, I worked in the office after school because it was so convenient. It was right next door. And when I got to be 18, it was either go to college, go to work. What was I going to do? And that was about a 50-50 proposition back then, not like it is today. And so they came to me and they said, hey, look, we're opening franchises around the Midwest. We want you to do that for us. So I cobbled together a suit, and I got in my car, and I drove to Columbus and Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and Chicago, and we opened these franchises from zero, from scratch. And then I would hang out there for 6 months or so and then move on to the next one. And finally, I got tired of living out of a suitcase. So at, I think it was 22 or 23, we decided to open our own company here in Northwest Ohio, and started with 6 people. It was back in 86. And we have 200 and some people today. So it's been a hell of a ride.
Awesome. So I enjoyed reading your book, Blue Collar Cash. Can you tell me what inspired you to write this book?
Well, first off, there is no way in God's green earth that I thought I'd ever be an author. I never got up and said, okay, I'm going to start writing something. What happened was my daughter got really ill at 12 years of age, like really bad. We didn't know what her future was. And so it was a pretty scary 5 years for her mom and I, as well as for her. And so when you're sitting in oncology rooms and doctor's offices and waiting rooms and ultrasound rooms and all that kind of stuff, you have a lot of time to think. And what really prompted me to start talking about this was I wanted to write Nicole a letter about what she should be chasing in life, like what's really important. And, the words comfort, peace, and freedom kept coming back to me. I couldn't lose these words. I mean, I just started seeing them everywhere, like yellow Volkswagens. Once you focus on it, you see it everywhere. And so I started writing down stories about things that I thought were important. And then I talked with friends of mine who were blue-collar entrepreneurs who overcame the most amazing negative situations to become really successful people. So I started sharing their stories, and pretty soon I had 12 or 13 legal pads full of ink and 80,000 words. So it was my wife that said it, actually. She goes, with all the coaching that you do around your office, you've got a book here. You should write it. Okay, so I did, and I can't even believe it. I Googled editors in New York, like, someone who didn't know anything about what they were doing. Found that gentleman who found me a ghostwriter to help me edit the thing, who found me an agent, who found me a publisher, and it just went crazy from there. Became a bestseller last year. I don't know how, but I'm eternally blessed and really grateful that it all happened. So.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And it's a really good book. And I wanted today to dive in specifically on the chapter on goal setting, because I think, like for most entrepreneurs or people that start their business, really, they're so focused on the day-to-day, it's hard to see up. You know what I'm saying? Doing what it takes to keep the doors open, make payroll, that's what you're doing every day. And if you're not intentional, that's where you could stay. So how do we pick a goal, and should that goal be big, or should that goal be small?
Well, first off, if I can step back for just a second, I don't think that any entrepreneur should lead an if-then life. Okay,
Yeah.
if I work really hard, then someday I'll catch a break, and then I'll be successful. I don't think you should allow life to happen to you. I think you should happen to life. I think that's just the way it is. And so for any entrepreneur out there, this is pretty controversial, but your first goal should be to become as irrelevant to your company as possible, as quickly as possible. And I say that because the only way you can truly drive the vision of your company or the growth of your company is if you don't have to do anything within it. I mean, if you're over the top involved in digging in the trenches, then you can't, like you said, you can't break free to be intentional to have those things. So you have to find a way to get out of that and allow the entrepreneurial spirit around you, with the people around you, to grow. Because the more entrepreneurs you can surround yourself with, I should say, the more entrepreneurs you can surround yourself with, the more they will help you drive your company way further than you can do it yourself. So, that's a tough pill to swallow for, 90% of entrepreneurs out there, because they think, well, I make everything happen. I do this and I do that. I work 80 hours a week. I have diabetes by the time I'm 50 and heart problems and everything else. No, that's not the way this works. You're supposed to run your business. It's not supposed to run you. So getting to goal setting is something that you first have to, the first step that I write about in Blue Collar Cash is you have to change your mindset to the point where I use the example of a smoker. Okay. Smokers don't quit until they identify as a non-smoker. They don't just give it up. They have to change who they are to say, okay, I don't do that anymore. That's not me. And that's the same thing with goal setting. You literally have to say to yourself, I'm done talking and thinking about goals and hopes and wishes and dreams. I'm now going to be a path maker. Everything that I do is going to have a precise, defined, clearly stepped out pathway. And so you have to congratulate yourself that you're there. You have to literally give yourself that moment to say, okay, I'm this new guy or this new gal. Okay. So that's literally the first step. And I think it's an important one, because if you don't, you'll tend to flux back and forth to your old habits,
Absolutely.
So then the first thing is you got to own the goal, whatever it is. I recommend starting small, because the more you can nail something quickly, the more you can build confidence that now I'm this new game changing, goal oriented machine. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I always think about something that really either irks you or something you really want to get done, and make it small. And then it has to be something that you literally think about all the time, because you've all heard about reticular activating systems and laws of attraction and all those kinds of things. If it's not something that's in front of you that you can see on a daily basis, you'll tend to lose the intensity of wanting to go after and get that goal. So be very careful on what you pick, because it has to be intense and real. Otherwise, don't even talk about it, and don't even tell me or anybody else about it, because no one's going to care if it's not real. So that's another harsh lesson for people, because I see people waste a lot of time on goals that they really don't own.
Yeah.
So once you decide something that you really want, then obviously you need to build a pathway toward it. And I think that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, we have goal boards all around the building, and people write their personal goals up on the board so that they can share it with others, which is actually the final step. But, you can't just walk up to that goal board and say, I'd like to be taller, or I would like to someday maybe do this. No, it's got to be specific. I want to buy a new pickup truck. I need $5,000 down. I'm going to save $100 a week for 49 and half weeks. And at the end of that week, okay, there's a start date, there's the method I'm using, there's the end date, and then there's the transaction. Not, short of that, you've got nothing but a hope, a dream, or a wish. You've got nothing but someday going on. And that's again something that people, that's the first step is always the hardest, but it's the most important, because once you get it rolling, which is the third step, which is to put it into action, where you actually go to your payroll person and say, I want you to knock that money out of my account every week and put it somewhere I can't get it. It's still an inactive hope, wish, or a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So, having all of that, then you put it into action. You say, let's go, let's make this happen, let's do it. And all you have to do is literally breathe for 49 and some odd weeks, and you're going to be there. And the greatest part about that is, Carolyn, is as those weeks go by, you start building this enormous amount of confidence in your ability to make things happen. And then all of a sudden you start thinking about the next goal, and the longer term one, maybe the more important one, like your retirement or a new house or your spirituality or your generosity or your sport hobby, whatever it might be. And so sharing it with others, I think, is killer. I said this on a show yesterday. There is no way I would have jumped off that 15-foot tall diving board at the public pool if I had to do it all by myself. There's no way I would have done it. I remember walking up on that board, and I talked about this in the book, and I had friends that were there, and if they weren't egging me on, I'd have turned around and ran off that board down the steps and ran home, because it was fearful. Yeah. And it was challenging at times, but looking down on them and having their support, I launched myself off the board and never looked back. So I think it's important to have people pick you up. But there again, you need to be very careful who you pick, because there's a lot of people out there who are commiserators, okay? Yes. You don't need to do that. Just stay safe where you're at. Don't take any risks. Just be you, because, I'm scared of taking risks, and I don't want you to do that either, because I like you next to me, both of us being ineffective people. I like the club we belong to. Be careful who you pick, because it may not even be someone that you know very well. It could be someone that you just admire, or someone that's goal-oriented themselves, because they will be the one to say, hey, whoa. Don't turn sideways. Walk forward. Walk straight. Keep your eyes on the prize here. Let's go. And that hand on your shoulder is very important. So I know I did an entire half an hour thing in a chapter in 5 minutes, but
no, you're good.
It is very important to make things real, because otherwise they just live in dreamland and never show up.
Yeah, become when, not if. So when you set goals for like your company, how do you get people to help you, or do you share that with them? What is that? How do you get them to be in line with that?
If it's a company goal, I'll just tell you a very interesting story, because this one kind of punched me in the gut. So this is probably 10 years ago. We were rolling. Our revenue was clinking up every year, and it was doing pretty good. And one day we plateaued for a little while, and I said, I got all the people around me that I thought were the real movers and shakers in our company. And I put them all in a room, and I said, okay, you all have a piece of paper and a pen in front of you. I want you to write down where you think this company could go in 1 or 2 years, revenue-wise. And just so you know, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because if we do what you say, I'm going to share some of that revenue with you. And you are going to have autonomy within your divisions, which they kind of already had, to make decisions to make that goal happen. Well, wouldn't you know it, I collected all these pieces of paper and looked at them all. My number was the lowest number.
Really? That surprises me.
How about that? So be careful that you are not your own worst limiter, your own worst ceiling. And lo and behold, I said, okay, let's rock and roll. And I put a program together to share this revenue. And again, people say, well, I can't afford that. Baloney. It's revenue you don't have yet. You're sharing something that you don't even have yet.
Yeah.
Okay. It costs you nothing. Are you going to retain 70 or 80% of the newfound revenue? Absolutely you are, but you're going to give 30% of it away, but who cares?
Exactly. It's found money.
Yeah, it's found money. So, and bam, just like that, we've hit every one of those goals and have kept going every year. So to see amazing. The power of the people around you saying, and I say this a lot, I can't get what I want, nor can my company get what it wants or needs until all of you get what you want first. And I absolutely believe that. Businesses are linear creatures, right? You have input, you have work, you have output, and then hopefully you have revenue and profit at the end where we sit as owners. And so everyone else has to win first. So I want people here to be as selfish as possible, not at the detriment of somebody else,
Absolutely.
but focusing on themselves. Because if they win for themselves first and the company second, we're always going to win in the end.
Gotcha. And I know the first thing you said is to really work on this things. You have to become basically relevant to your business. That's a huge step. And especially for most people that are business owners, they're control freaks, just generally. How do you work on getting there? And can it be a process?
Well, yeah, it can certainly be a process. I would say this. So you first need to identify who in your company can take some of the load off of your shoulders. Okay. And again, be careful, because there might be some hidden gems in your office that you don't even know about. Why? Because you never even asked the question. Okay. Why are you here? What are you in it for? What's your next 1, 2, 3, 5 years look like? How can we make that happen for you as a company together? Ask these kinds of questions to try to get some of that out, because I guarantee you this. People call me, they say all the time, "Oh, you're lucky you're one of those entrepreneur guys." Okay. Here's a piece of paper and a crayon. Draw entrepreneur for me, okay?
Yeah, really.
You can't. It's just a concept. However, I believe that entrepreneurship is a collection of 9 characteristics, and you read about those in the book: persistence, resilience, humility, faith, courage, initiative, vision, all those things. So I think every one of us has that inside of us. They just need a reason to have it come out. And what that reason is control over your future. So if I can convince people around me to say, you are in control of what you drive, where you live, where you vacation, what pets you have, dog, cat, what color, what would you name it, your hobbies, your sports, your spiritual moment, your generosity, you're in charge of all that. You're in control of it. Take your department and run with it, make it happen, and go get all those things for yourself, one piece at a time. That's how you do it. And the greatest part about that is you're not really losing control when you do that. You're actually creating more control over the thing, because now you've created a bunch of mini-me's, okay, that are surrounding you, that are perfectly happy and content to take enough risk to run their department, but yet they don't want to be entrepreneurs enough where they have to go borrow the money for 42 dump trucks like I had to do.
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying? So there's no difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur other than the risk that the entrepreneur takes, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And so if you can create that environment or that atmosphere, you're not losing control. You're controlling more than ever, okay? And if that's your gig, mine's never been to be a control freak. Mine is to see how many people I can find that can win in their lives for themselves.
Gotcha.
And if that's a control thing, so be it.
So you bring up in your characteristics of an entrepreneur, one that I think that I want to talk about is resilience, right? Because it seems like being an entrepreneur, there are always issues. And sometimes they can feel rather defeating.
Yeah.
So how do you realize that issues are, how do you get past having so many issues, even when you're working towards a goal?
Well, it's simple. I've had a brochure for my life on the wall for a very long time. And again, it's where I live, what I drive, what I boat in, my golf game, my family life, my pets, my granddaughter, who's only 6 months old.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. My time with my wife, I should have put her first. So, but I just look at all those things in a totality, and I say, okay, that's Ken's nirvana. That's my comfort, peace, and freedom. If I can live like that, that would be really cool. And so every time I had a little struggle, I would look at that board and I would look at how I wanted to live, and I would say, okay, this is just, failure is a learning mechanism, okay? And this is just one more learning mechanism that's going to toughen me up. It's going to get me experience. It's going to make me better. And I'm going to get one piece closer to that puzzle that I'm trying to build. And the reason that those are so important, people talk about vision boards all the time, like it almost loses its meaning. A vision board without pathways is nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I look at it this way. if I gave you a puzzle with 1,000 pieces, dumped them on the table, and then walked away with the box, you're done. You unless you were in prison for 20 years, you could never build this puzzle, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be in solitary confinement to figure out the puzzle. So, but the same is true. I mean, the box on the cover of the box of the puzzle is everything. Without it, you're lost. So why shouldn't you have a puzzle box for your life? It just makes total sense to me.
Vision of where you're going. And two, I think, being an entrepreneur as well, is that it's sometimes hard to remember that pain is where growth comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And that some of the best changes and moves you can make in your company are after something painful.
Any great athlete, you look at every great athlete and what do they have? They have a training routine where they're in the gym pushing weights and pulling weights, and even the golfers are like pulling bands across them constantly. That's not fun. I mean, it feels good to me. I work out, it feels good, but I mean, there is pain in that, and there should be. There's I mean, think about growing pains where your bones hurt when you're 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 12, 15 years old. There's a reason that happens. It's to form who you are as a human being. And I think mentally, you've got to go through growing pains mentally as well, because, it's funny, I thought I knew it all in business, right? And I wasn't cocky about it, but I felt pretty confident. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, okay, well, I've got a couple hundred people here that are looking at me like, how are you going to lead us through this one, Ken? And, I said, well, there's got to be an opportunity within this pandemic somewhere. We just have to find it. So becoming an essential business was the first step. So we found ways to become essential, and we worked our way through it. But I got to tell you, the eerie calm that I had was from the fact that I had struggled through so many of these challenges in the past. And I thought, well, I don't have the answer for this, but I feel confident that we can find it as a team. Absolutely. And that's what I did. I got everyone together and I said, how do we do this? How do we survive this? And, one to another came up with ideas and whatever. And pretty soon we were essential. And not only were we essential, but we were so essential, we started thriving.
So, that's even better. You can be a black swan, right?
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, it's the dumbest saying in the world. Life gives you lemons make lemonade, but it's absolutely true. I mean, exactly. If you get tossed a challenge, you just have to surround yourself with wonderful thinking people like we all have, and just say, how do we do this?
So how involved are you in your business now at this point?
Well, again, I like to look at myself as the guy who's in a helicopter about 100 feet above the company, and I tear the roof off and I look down and I go, okay, that's going well. That's going well. Oop, that might need a little adjusting. What's going on here? So I'm kind of like a visionary where I hover above and I just look back down on it. And I give people total autonomy to do whatever it is they need to do within reason. And, they're in charge of financial statements and I look at all those things. So I'm just kind of like an overseer of the thing. I think in traction, they call it an integrator and a visionary. Yeah. I'm not necessarily the integrator. Okay. I'm a better visionary. So I kind of hover above the thing and look back down and, see what needs, see where we're going long-term and, plan for the future. And everyone here thinks today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year. I'm the one who thinks 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years.
Gotcha. And usually, especially as an entrepreneur, you're usually the visionary and have a hard time with the actual integration. At least that's my.
Yeah.
That's like, I can see where we're going. Now, I don't know exactly how we're going to get there. That's your job.
No. Well, I think that's where you come to right person, right chair. Yeah. And I think I know for a fact that you better determine what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. Okay, because otherwise you're going to be stuck in what you don't like and what you're not good at and what you don't like doing. And someone can fill that role. Okay, absolutely. You just have to, again, make yourself a little less relevant, which is a hard pill to swallow, and try to make that happen.
No, I agree. So you want to talk about any of your new projects you got going on?
Yeah. So I wrote this book, Blue Collar Cash, for the end user, the person who's looking for a place to go find his or her way, occupationally forward thinking, what they want their life to look like, drawing that brochure out for themselves, figuring out that I can get what I want for my life in many different ways, as long as I know what that it is. And I recognize that there's so many people out there that don't focus on culture because they are too buried in the sand. They're too knee deep in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of people tell me, okay, so you've talked about the employee side, the 15 to 30-year-old. What about the person that's trying to find these people? So I'm in the process of writing my next book. It's called Cool Boss, how to be one, how to find one, or change the one you have. And it's good because all three readers can read it. I mean, if I'm a boss that needs to work on culture, I'm going to read this. If I'm someone who's looking for a cool place to work, I'm going to read this because that's the thing I'm going to look for. If I'm a person who works somewhere and the place is kind of stale and I wish I could improve the whole atmosphere, but my boss doesn't really know what he or she's too busy to do all that stuff, and I can change and make suggestions to create this culture because they made me the office manager and that's what I do. So one of three readers can read it and hopefully improve the whole office environment as they go along.
I agree. And I think sometimes people take for granted how essential their team is, which is probably why they're so heavily involved in the business still, because they don't.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's as simple as, okay, 3 or 4 of them call off today. Now what?
Yeah.
Right? How
Exactly.
you feeling? How you feeling right now?
I can't breathe.
Yeah. So, put yourself in that, imaginary scenario, and you'll realize real quick who you've got working for you.
Awesome. So we can get the book on Amazon, right?
You can. And one thing I want to add is, I never wrote this book to make money. I did it to help the entrepreneurs behind me shorten their learning curve. My world was really good before I wrote any books. But one of the things I recognized was so many of these supposed self-help books, people read them and then they put them on the shelf and they don't ever do anything with them. Someone called it the other day shelf help, not self-help. And so I said, you know what? Enough of that. I built this 8-week course. It's literally $179. I mean, it's not like the $2,000-$3,000 ones you see on the internet, but it's 8 sessions. They're 45 minutes a session. You take this course. You can do it all online, and it literally forces you to use the concepts in Blue Collar Cash to change your life and the way you think this afternoon, not next month, next week, like today. So I put that on my kenrusk.com. You can find it there. And again, I donate most of the money to the charities I support anyway from that program. So if you're helping yourself, you're going to help somebody else in the process.
Do you do individual coaching?
I do individual coaching here at the office. Yes, I do. And I've also done probably 30 or 40 coach sessions with different individuals outside of my office as well. That's something that it's really interesting because I find myself really trying to qualify who I have on the other line, because if you're going to do that with me, you'll find one thing about me is I hate wasting time, and I hate people who I hate it when people are so, they sell that this is something they really want when they're kidding themselves. So I'm pretty selective with who I do that with because I want them to win. And I've got some winners right now that I love doing it with, and it's a great time.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ken, for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carolyn. I appreciate it. Anytime.
Thanks. Hang on.